We be live. Wait.
It's happening.
Fake.
Oh!
How did that happen? Okay, cool. I'm in the right place right now. Before we start
Daddy's
talking
back
about
on top.
before we talk about Jordan Peterson, which we're gonna do about in a second, the previous live stream that we did, YouTube removed it for copyright, even though it was fair use. So every time, I'm telling you, these Muslim organizations, they keep filing false copyright claims on our videos. Even though we're reviewing their videos, they don't like what we say. Even though all the other people who review them that don't get removed, we get removed because they don't like what we're saying. And here's the thing, like, we're gonna challenge it. Like last time we challenged it and we came back, we brought back the video. We're gonna bring back this video because it's obviously fair use because we're reviewing the video.
And
so
we
it's
had
gonna come.
so much fun too. It was
We had
hilarious.
so much fun. It was so much fun. It was about, we reviewed Muhammad. We basically reviewed a cartoon for children about Prophet Muhammad's early life.
His childhood.
And his childhood, and we discovered some really problematic views that they were being fed to children and their Islamic cartoons for
and
children.
They have a problem with us.
And they have a problem with us.
And YouTube has a problem with us.
But they didn't like us. No, it's not YouTube. It's them. It's them filing a copyright claim, and YouTube just be like, okay, here's a
What I mean is that we're demonetized on our own channel for hateful and harmful conduct.
Right,
Meanwhile,
right. But let me finish my point.
Some crazy stuff.
Let me finish my point. I'm saying is that so here's the thing. Obviously, it's a false copyright claim because it was a review of another video, right? That's covered under fair use. And then what happens is that you challenge them, and they have 2 weeks to respond to your challenge, and they don't, because responding to your challenge requires them to take us to court. And they're not going to take us to court because they know it's insane. It's a fair use, right? But after 2 weeks, eventually the video will come back up, but it will lose all the views that it potentially could have gotten, right? Because it was, like, usually people just watch it at the beginning and then nobody watches after, right? So we'll challenge it, and then when it comes back on, we'll let you know that it's back on, and you guys need to go share the hell out of that because it just lost all the views that it could have ever gotten. I know we're not that big of a channel, and it's not going to get that much views anyways, but we need those views, the small amount of views that we get, we need them, okay? So you guys
need what we can get.
We need what we can get, yeah. So we'll challenge it, and they will fail, and the video will come back on. And we're going to review all the videos on that channel, by the way. That channel we're going to continue reviewing that channel, okay? And then
they're going to continue to strike us.
It's not a strike. It wasn't a strike. If it was a strike, that means we wouldn't be able to stream today, okay? So the first time we got a strike because of that Shia propaganda on the movie that we exposed, they didn't do a copyright claim. They did a copyright strike. So we couldn't even stream then, right? These people, they were like, okay, we're not going to do a copyright strike. Well, we do a copyright claim. That means the video was like removed, but we didn't get a strike. If we got a strike, we wouldn't be able to stream today. So we are able to stream today. So it's great. Anyways, yes, exactly. Our queen is saying do more cartoon reviews. We will do more cartoon reviews.
Number one issue, he was transparent.
Yes. So
Muhammad is so holy. He's not even corporeal.
They will probably remove the videos every time we review one of their videos, but then we will get it back on, and then you guys need to share it once it's back on, okay? We'll go after the channel. Now that they're waging war on us, we're going to go after them, okay?
Armin has one mode, and that is double down.
Oh, yeah. All right, so what are we doing? We're doing Jordan Peterson today.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
So I haven't seen this.
Oh, you haven't?
Okay. I haven't seen this.
But
people
we're gonna get all. Yeah, we're gonna get all philosophical today. Are you ready for that?
Oh,
you don't
geez.
like. All right. Hold on. Let's watch this first. Let me know if you have audio. Hold on.
So you can think about Christ from a psychological perspective, and the critic my critic, this particular critic that I've been reading, said, well, that doesn't differentiate Christ much from a whole sequence of dying and resurrecting mythological gods. And of course, people have made that claim in comparative religion. Joseph Campbell did that, and Jung to a lesser degree, I would say, but Campbell did that. But the difference, and C.S. Lewis pointed this out as well, the difference between those mythological gods and Christ was that there's a representation of, there's a historical representation of his existence as well. Now you can debate whether or not that's genuine. You can debate about whether or not he actually lived and whether there's credible objective evidence for that, but it doesn't matter in some sense because this, well, it does, but there's a sense in which it doesn't matter because there's still a historical story. And so what you have in the figure of Christ is an actual person who actually lived plus a myth. And in some sense, Christ is the union of those two things. The problem is I probably believe that, but I don't know. I'm amazed at my own belief and I don't understand it. Like, because I've seen sometimes the objective world and the narrative world touch. You know, that's Jungian synchronicity. Yeah. And I've seen that many times in my own life. And so in some sense, I believe it's undeniable. You know, we have a narrative sense of the world. For me, that's been the world of morality. That's the world that tells us how to act. It's real. Like, we treat it like it's real. It's not the objective world, but the narrative and the objective world touch. And the ultimate example of that in principle is supposed to be Christ. But I don't know what to, that seems to me oddly plausible.
Yeah.
But I still don't know what to make of it. It's too, partly because it's too terrifying a reality to fully believe. I don't even know what would happen to you if you fully believed it.
If you believed in the story of Christ, or if you believed that history and let's say the narrative meet, let's
both,
say.
I think you, because when you believe that, you buy both those stories. You believe that the narrative and the objective can actually touch.
What are you're muted. What are your thoughts?
So, okay, so
I need to, whoa. Wait. I don't know what to make of that.
So Jordan Peterson for a very long time was struggling between, I mean, like him and the people that follow him, especially a whole lot of atheists that follow him, see some value in religion, even if you don't believe in it, right? Mm-hmm. And the emphasis has always been in the power of narratives, mm-hmm. right? For a lot of, and there's a lot of debate, there has been a lot of debate on whether or not Jordan Peterson could be considered a Christian himself or not, right? A lot of atheists who defend him say, well, no. And a lot of Christians who defend him consider him to be like promoting Christianity, okay? The difference is whether or not you have to believe that these stories are true or not to be a Christian, right? So a lot of defenders of Jordan Peterson think that these narratives are what shaped society and what has shaped culture and shaped the way we live. And there is a lot more value in them, these stories, especially Jesus' story, than some of us atheists realize. For a lot of Christians, though, there has been something lacking in all of this narrative because they think like narrative is not enough. Like a lot of Christians who don't consider Jordan Peterson to be a real Christian think like this is not just narrative. This is not just stories. Jesus actually rose from the dead. Jesus was crucified and Jesus ascended to heaven. This is
died
something
for your sins. He's the salvation of mankind.
Yeah, this is something physical that happened. Okay, so a lot of people that are on the side of Jordan Peterson, they might think like, it doesn't really matter if it happened or not, right? These archetypes, these story structures, they represent something deeper, something about us, something about inside of us, right? Something
that we need.
Yeah, something metaphorical about something bigger than just one person. However, like, you can see here that, again, you guys could tell me in the live chat if you have a different interpretation of this. It seems like for Jordan Peterson, that hasn't been enough if this is like just a narrative, right? So what a lot of people think, disbelievers or atheists or people who don't believe in God, what we're missing is a sense of significance, right? And there's a hunt, for significance everywhere, right? It's interesting because a lot of people think that these atheists going and following Jordan Peterson, a lot of religious people say, like, look, the reason why Jordan Peterson has a lot of supporters among atheists is because atheists are still hungry for significance and meaning and purpose, right? And they're not getting that from religion. But the interesting thing is that the people who were always atheists, like, they don't feel that lack. They don't feel that there's something missing, right? You usually get that feeling of something missing from people that used to be religious and now they're not. Yeah, and now they're not religious because that hole that I think that they're trying to fill is not something that was created by religion. It's not that every human being has that hole in them that they're trying to fill, right? I think it was a hole that was created, and maybe when you leave your religion, that hole is still there that needs to be filled by something else, right? But we here at Atheist Republic have always suggested that hole could be filled with so many different things, right? And it doesn't need to have a religious theme to it. It could have if you wanted to, as long as, and we think like without filling that hole without a belief is actually a lot more helpful, right? So he has I don't know, how did he phrase it? Hold on, let me bring him back on. There's a narrative world here. Like, let's go through it one word by word, okay?
Think about Christ from a psychological perspective, and the critic, my critic, this particular critic that I've been reading, said, well, that doesn't differentiate Christ much from a whole sequence of dying and resurrecting mythological gods. And of course,
so yeah, so imagine telling him, like, he comes in like, okay, so Christ, the people like Jordan Peterson are constantly saying there are some useful myths, right? There are some useful narratives that are so much powerful, that there's so much value in them, that it just shapes society and blah blah blah.
It's a meme.
Yeah, it's a meme basically, right? So the reaction to that is like, well, that story structure of Christ has been repeated throughout history among many other deities. So what is so unique about Jesus that you're latching on to Jesus, right? If you think this is an important story arc and everything, well, we could do that with other figures as well. So Jordan Peterson's response to that is that he cares that the story is real or not. So
of course, people have made that
claim.
Said, well, that doesn't differentiate Christ much from a whole sequence of dying and resurrecting mythological gods. And of course, people have made that claim in comparative religion. Joseph Campbell did that, and Jung to a lesser degree, I would say, but Campbell did that. But the difference, and C.S. Lewis pointed this out as well, the difference between those mythological gods and Christ was that there's a representation of, there's a historical representation of his existence as well. Now,
so this is Jordan Peterson admitting that these stories, just being stories, is not enough for him. There needs to be, the story needs to be, so there's a narrative world and there's the objective world. So this is basically a narrative world talking about his stories and mythology, and then we have the objective world. Basically, that's his way of saying the real world, right? But the fact that this narrative world actually has some connection to the real world in his mind means this story is different from all the other, like Zeus, Thor. I don't know. Like, wait, no, these are not. Thor is more representative. Hercules. I don't know. All these other, they're not connected to the real world. But Jesus is the story is based on a person that existed in real history. Again, you could debate here. I mean, a lot of people have different opinions about that here. I go based on what most non-religious biblical scholars think. And I'm not saying if they're correct or not. I just apply Occam's razor. Most biblical scholars believe that the story of Jesus is based on something that happened to somebody, right, at some point in time. But how much that's basically all we know about that, like nothing else, like we don't know what he said, we don't know what he we don't know much about what he taught, we don't know much about his philosophy. We might know a little bit, we can guess a little bit here and there, but the Christian perspective of Jesus, especially today, is not at all representative of I mean, there's no way to show that that's representative of that person. Okay, but most scholars, and also there's some disagreements, but most biblical, non-religious, secular scholars do believe that there was a person that this happened to. Okay, so the fact that there's some historicity to it is, we could accept that, right? I mean, we could say that's with high probability. But what about, but not the resurrection, not the raising from the dead, not from any of the miracles, like not turning water into wine, none of that. We don't accept any of that, obviously. But let's continue.
Now you can debate whether or not that's genuine. You can debate about whether or not he actually lived and whether there's credible objective evidence for that, but it doesn't matter in some sense, because it does, but there's a sense in which it doesn't matter because there's still a historical story. And so what you have in the figure of Christ is an actual person who actually lived, plus a myth. And in some sense, Christ is the union of those two things. The problem is
so see, he wants the myth world and the objective world. The myth world is not enough. So this whole idea of useful stories, what did he call it? What did he call Jordan Peterson? He had a name for it. It was his version.
Something synthesis. No,
wait. Useful. He had a specific stories. Jordan Peterson. He had a very specific name for it. If anybody in the live chat knows what I'm referring to, please let me know. Facts, value, rationality. Is basically Jordan Peterson's version of saying, okay, so let's just, because I can't remember the phrase, I'm just going to say useful truth. Metaphorical truth. Is that what yeah, I think so. Metaphorical truth. Basically, not true. Okay, so there are things that are labeled as true, but they're not true. However, because they're so useful, they are treating them as true. Okay, and an example, I think, was it Brett Weinstein that gave this example, is that, I don't know, for example, let's say that you always assume that a gun is loaded. Okay, and you treat it as if it's always loaded. Even if it's not loaded, you treat it as if it's loaded, right? So believing that this gun is loaded is really helpful for security and safety, even if it's at times it's not loaded. This is like a useful myth, a useful untrue that is so useful that you could treat it as true. Okay? But it's kind of sneaky, because if it's a useful untrue that you believe in, but they call it like something like a metaphorical truth, knowing that it's not true. So why are you using a terminology that says it's true, given that it's not true? Because I guess they're saying like treating these untruths as true is better for humanity, and it's better for you as a person, right? However, now we have an admission here that that's not enough. He doesn't want these useful truths to just be untrue, but we treat them as true because they are useful. He's like, no, there needs to be, he wants there to be a connection between his narrative world and the objective world so much that he breaks into tears thinking about how much he needs that. Right? Look at
probably
this.
Believe that, but I don't
Okay.
know. I'm amazed at my own belief, and I don't understand it. Like, because I've seen sometimes the objective world and the narrative world touch. You know, that's Jungian synchronicity.
Yeah.
And I've seen that many times in my own life. And so in some sense, I believe it's undeniable. You know, we have a narrative sense of the world. For me, that's been the world of morality. That's the world that tells us how to act. It's real. Like, we treat it like it's real. It's not the objective world, but the narrative and the objective world touch. And the ultimate example of that in principle is supposed to be Christ. But I don't know what to, that seems to me oddly plausible.
Yeah.
But I still don't know what to make of it. It's too, partly because it's too terrifying a reality to fully believe. I don't even know what would happen to you if you fully believed it.
If you believed in the story of Christ, or if you believe that history and let's say the narrative meet, let's
both,
say.
I think you, because when you believe that, you buy both those stories. You believe that the narrative and the objective can actually touch.
So an interesting thing is that he's saying he doesn't know. Oh, let me fix this. He doesn't know what it would be like if you truly believe that. Okay, because that might be confusing to a lot of people, because they're like, well, there's a lot of people who truly believe that. What do you mean you don't know what will happen if you truly believe that? Well, the problem is that Jordan Peterson doesn't think they truly believe that, because he thinks that, like a lot of Christians, if they actually truly believe that, they wouldn't at all be living the way they're living. Like, he thinks the significance of truly believing that is so much that there's no way that a lot of the people who say they're Christian are actually believing that story. They don't even know the significance of believing that story, right? So that's part of his philosophy. He's like,
do you think that they would be living their lives differently if they truly believed it according to his standards?
I don't think he's sure what it would be like, but he think it would be significant. He would think it would be shattering you to the very core, like to truly believe that this story actually happened. God came and was man on earth, and he died and he resurrected. Well, that's his philosophy. He thinks like you can't. I mean, I kind of get. I mean, I had the same sense when I was like a Muslim, and I looked at Muslims around me. I couldn't understand how could these people think that they're Muslim, because to truly believe that this world, for example, is temporary as a Muslim, I think, and that you die and then you spend eternity in heaven or hell. And then I looked around me and I looked at all these Muslims who were worried about so many insignificant things, given that this world is going to end and they're going to spend an eternity. Like, I couldn't understand, like, why were these people not worried about heaven and hell and not ending up in hell and living? And, you know, I looked at, for example, Muslims around me, and none of them that I know of, and other than my religious teacher at school, had ever read the Quran cover to cover. Like, these people, these are people who thought that this is the word of God, this the creator. I mean, these are people who have read other books, and yet they believe that this is a book that is the verbatim word of God, and they haven't even bothered to read it. Like, I could not understand, why wouldn't you want to know what the creator of the universe has to say, right? Go on.
Are we sure that? Because with your understanding of that,
that's my
that
understanding.
Time,
yes.
Is that we're sure that that's his understanding, what he means by if they truly believed?
Well, let's actually okay. Let me actually show you another clip, maybe for you to judge as well, because I listen to stuff like this too much. So maybe, yeah.
But also, like, have you ever seen someone have a come to Jesus moment?
Yes.
Like
it's full cringe.
You know, growing up in a Christian community, like I've seen a lot of people have like full blown.
It isn't obvious to
wait. There's audio. Full blown come to Jesus moments, and it is shattering.
Well, that's what he means. I think he expects most Christians to behave like that, if they truly believe. Not the way most Christians are.
Maybe that's the difference between being like born again versus like just culturally you grow up with it.
Well, here, let me show you why I think that what I said represents what he thinks. Just quickly.
It isn't obvious to me, and I think maybe I derived this criticism from Nietzsche, but people have asked me whether or not I believe in God, and I've answered in various ways. No, but I'm afraid he probably exists. That's one answer. Yeah, no, but I'm terrified he might exist. That would be truthful answer to some degree, or that I act as if God exists, which I think is, I do my best to do that. But then there's a real stumbling block there, because there's no limit to what would happen if you acted like God existed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I believe that acting that out fully, I mean, maybe it's not reasonable to say to believers, you aren't sufficiently transformed for me to believe that you believe in God. Believe the story that you're telling me. You're not a sufficient, the way you live isn't sufficient testament to the truth. And people would certainly say that, let's say, about the Catholic Church, or at least the way that it's portrayed, is that with all the sexual corruption, for example, it's like, really, you believe that the Son of God, that Jesus Christ was the Son of God, and yet you act that way, and I'm supposed to buy your belief. And it seems to me that the church is actually quite guilty on that account, because the attempts to clean up the mess have been rather half-hearted in my estimation.
Yeah.
And so I don't think Christians don't manifest this, and I'm including myself, I suppose, in that description, perhaps don't manifest the transformation of attitude that would enables the outside observer to easily conclude that they believe.
Yeah. Now the way to deal with that, or the.
All right. I mean, I technically think that's not the manifestation I expect, but it does show that he was thinking in the same way I suggested, because I don't think, like, I mean, if you do believe in Jesus, I mean, the Catholic doctrine, at least, you can still sin and your sins are going to be forgiven.
Yeah. Does he not understand that? Like,
yeah. But at the same time, people will say that if you truly believe in Jesus, it will reflect on your actions. You know what I mean? So there's two ways of looking at this, right? One, it could be like, well, through Christianity, all your sins are forgiven, so you have a license to sin. It doesn't. You could commit. I mean, the Catholic Church, all the things it does is consistent with the Catholic doctrine, because we're all sinners. Some of us lie to our moms. Some of us abuse children. Some of us commit genocide. A sin is a sin is a sin. We're all sinners. They're all the same. Potato, potato. Well, you believe in Jesus, ask for forgiveness, you go to heaven, right? But so that's one way of looking at it. But another way of looking at it is, yes, true, but you shall know them through the fruits of their labor, blah, blah, blah. A person's actions reflect of how godly he is. So these are two competing ways.
Faith is nothing without works. Come on.
Yeah.
Faith is nothing without works.
Yeah, right. So, yeah, you were going to say something?
Well, you're talking about, in Christianity, the forgiveness of sin. And that is a central part of the theology, but sometimes I feel like you take that part of it a little too far. Like, that is a very important part of the theology, but that doesn't mean that that sinful behavior is encouraged. It's still actively discouraged above like everything, right? It's just there's also that in there, you know.
Yep.
So it's not like people are like, oh, okay, I believe in Christ, I'm just gonna go do whatever I want because at the end of the day I believe in Christ. It's like,
Yeah, but
Then
it
people
might
don't even
indirectly it might indirectly result in that though, right? I mean, at least in the cover up of it, right? Because
rationalizing it.
yeah, I mean, yes, I did this, I was bad, but I talked to Jesus, he's cool with it. So you guys could go get effed. Because I thought,
feel like
and also the Catholic Church covering for people's crimes is also inconsistent with Catholic doctrine, because these people are talking to Christ, and through the Vatican and everything, the Vatican is like, why are we punishing these people? It's God's job to forgive them, or blah blah blah. Anyways, I'm just saying, like, but that's not the main thing I want to focus on, because at the end of the day, whether or not he thinks that that's how Catholics should behave or not based on their faith, his point is that most people who believe in God, say they believe in God, based on his standards, cannot really believe in God, because he thinks that your life would somehow be different. Either you will go join ISIS or you become a missionary. Like the idea of these stories genuinely happening are so the consequences of them on the life of people who actually believe them will be significant. You could debate, you could argue whether it's positive or negative or something. It would be different. You wouldn't be going around and just be like, what color should the curtains be? You know, I don't know what color curtains to buy. Like, that's not what would occupy your mind if you genuinely believe that this is the world we live in. But go on.
It kind of seems like he expects all believers to be what, at least in the Catholic Church or Catholic tradition, we call a martyr of charity. Where, you know, there are people who become martyrs because of persecution, but there are people who martyr themselves through the depths of their charity.
But again, I don't really know. Here's the thing: I don't think he himself is arguing, or I don't think the point is how would they live. Okay, that much. I think the point is that it would be significantly different, right? So I don't know if they would be charitable or they would be joining radical groups or something. But the point is that you can't believe this stuff and live like you can't truly believe this stuff. Like, here's an example. If I told you that a year from now, a whole bunch of people are going to come and beat you for 1 hour with a stick, and you might survive it and you might not, unless this is the life you live, you're going to spend that 1 year really trying to figure out what to do to avoid that happening to you. Okay? You're going to be obsessed with trying to figure, and maybe you become, I don't know what you're going to do, but something radical is going to change in this next year in your life. Okay. So, or a positive thing, right? You know, you're going to, let's say you're desperate for love and nobody ever loved you. And you're going to, like, 1 year from now, if you do these things, you're going to find the love of your life. Something significant. It's going to drastically change the way you live in the next 1 year. Yet we are to believe that the vast majority of the planet believe that this life is temporary and we have an eternity to look forward to, and what you're going to live in that eternity, it really depends on how you live your life. And yet most of them are living very lives that is very close to none of this being true. So I get where he's coming from, right? I'm not saying whether they're going to be charitable or whether they're going to be radical, whether they're going to be good people, bad people. That's not the point. The point is that this is not the life that they will be living. Okay, so yeah, go on.
Has he ever met Jehovah's Witnesses? They believe that they're living in the end of days, and that any day you wake up, it could be Armageddon in the rapture.
He didn't say they don't exist. Okay,
Just
so again,
not as many as he would think.
Yeah, and it's not and also it's not about which group of people. Every group of these people have some of them that seem like they're living as if these things exist, but most of them don't. Even in Jehovah's Witnesses, yes, we have a lot more, like a ratio of people within Jehovah's Witnesses that take these ideas very seriously is higher compared to, I don't know, your average Catholic. But even I've met Jehovah's Witness people that like, yes, they're like, oh yeah, blah blah blah, but they're not. They still have, it's still not earth shattering. You know what I mean? Like within Islam, within Christianity, anyways. So here's the thing. Yeah, go on. I want to go on.
Well, I'm just thinking about his thing about the narrative and the.
Yes, that's what I want to go back to, because that was a
So,
side.
what about Muhammad?
Well, okay, so somebody asked him about Muhammad, and he said that Muhammad was a warlord, and so it's two things. There's two things that it seems to be important.
It's the same thing where
No,
the narrative and the objective.
that's why I'm saying it's two things. It's not just the narrative touching with history, right? So first, the narrative has to be an actual useful narrative, a narrative that makes the world a better place. According to him, again, I'm not endorsing Christianity. Christianity is horrible. Okay, Christianity is anti-human, anti-woman, anti-gay, anti-trans, anti-science, it's barbaric, is promoting slavery. That's what I think about Christianity. But in Jordan Peterson's world, Islam cannot be a narrative that makes the world a better place, and Christianity is a narrative that makes it, the world a better place. So when it comes to Islam, I think Jordan Peterson might think that it has the historicity part, where the character of Muhammad touches that narrative, touches the objective world. So it's beyond just a narrative, but it's missing the useful part, right? It's not a good narrative, right? And then, so yeah, on one side we have Muhammad, which is historical according to Jordan Peterson, I think according to Jordan Peterson, but not a good narrative. And then we have mythological characters, like, ancient Greek, ancient Egyptian, ancient Norse, that have maybe some characters that have the same narratives as Jesus. But now we learn that the reason why they're failing, according to Jordan Peterson, I have to keep saying that because a lot of people are dumb, they're thinking I'm saying this. They don't have the historicity part. So I don't know if he has said this before, but this is, I think, the first time that he's saying he's demonstrating how, for him at least, narratives are not enough, because everything about the branding of Jordan Peterson has been so far the power of stories, the power of narratives, and now, after all of that, we're seeing him break into tears, showing that stories are not enough. Okay. Let me know if there's anything in the live chat that I need to highlight. I wrote a few things when I first saw that clip. By the way, if anybody has a disagreement on my take on what I think Jordan Peterson is saying, please let me know as well. But when I first saw this, I took some very messy notes on this, and I was supposed to organize it, but I didn't. So I'm just gonna see what I had to what was my first thoughts on my notepad. Yeah, okay, so here's what I said, here's what I thought, here's the first thing I wrote, and I'm gonna explain what I meant. Okay, I said it's not Jesus that makes the narrative world and the objective world touch. It's the storyteller. His story is part of the objective world. So what did I mean? Okay, let me read it again. It's not Jesus that makes the narrative world and objective world touch. It's the storyteller. His story is part of the objective world. So what do I mean by that? So I also believe in the power of stories, right? I really do think that this is why I tell people that I have a love-hate relationship with religions. Okay, I hate Islam and Christianity as a guide to life, and I hate it as certain stories that people actually believe in, that it happened. Okay, people thinking that these stories, gullible people to actually thinking oh yeah, Jesus rise to heaven, Muhammad cut the moon. I hate it if that's the effect of it, right? However, I love this. I love them because not this. And here's the thing: I don't even love the stories per se. Right? When I look at the stories, the mythology, they're not the best stories that we have ever written, right? We have like a lot of people, even the other stories that people think like promote as alternative to popular religions like Norse mythology, Greek mythology. They're good, some of them, but modern storytellers have really figured out
They've dialed
what
it in.
they have turned this into a science, right? The art of storytelling, right? They
To the
have
point
figured
that
out.
they teach you how a story should move in English class.
Yes, and
They even made a graph for it.
many graphs, like, and the psychological impacts of stories. So modern story writers are a lot better than anything that has people older generations have written. But the thing about mythology is neither the value that I see in that is neither the fact that these happened, because they didn't, or the fact that they're good stories, because they're not. But they tell a different story. This is where it gets meta, okay? They tell a story about the people who told those stories, okay? They tell a story about us. Why did we tell those stories? We have thousands of years worth of people eventually leading to Islam and Christianity, these stories becoming the most popular stories.
In Scientology.
Yeah, but why? Why did these stories become the most popular stories? Why did the people tell those stories? Where did these people get those stories from? Where is the history? Why is this story from here so similar to another story mentioned? Why is the story of Muhammad, Gabriel coming to Muhammad and telling him, "Iqra bi'ismika allazi khalaq"? Why is that story so similar to another story of a priest in England, in the UK, and that story being told a couple of years before Muhammad's story? And these are so far apart. When Angel Gabriel came to Muhammad and said, "Read, I cannot," and Muhammad said, "I cannot read," and then the angel said, "Read again," and Muhammad said, "I cannot read," and then the angel Gabriel like squeezed him, and Muhammad couldn't breathe anymore, and then angel Gabriel said again, "Read," and Muhammad said, "Oh, what should I read?" Because he's like, "God damn it, like this guy's not even gonna know. What do you want me to read?" Why is that story so similar to another story in England a couple of years before the story, where when an angel came to a priest or some monk or something and says, "Sing," and the priest says, "I cannot sing," and the angel says again, "Sing," and the priest says, "I cannot sing," and then eventually the angel says again, "Sing," and the priest says, "What should I sing?" And then it ends the same way, where Muhammad eventually says that story was like written in his heart, and that the priest says that he memorized it by heart. These are too similar for them. Again, they're too far away for them want to be a copy of each other. So these are now this is not just about the story of Muhammad. Now this is about the story behind the stories, right? When you see Exodus, the story of Exodus, okay? When the Jews were supposed to have left Egypt in such a huge number, any archaeologist worth anything will tell you now that that's impossible. That story did not happen. There's no way that many Jews came out of Egypt and went to Palestine, went to the land of the Canaanites, and there was no trace. Like, it's like much smaller level of population movement would have been left so much evidence of it. It is beyond reasonable doubt today that story didn't happen. But that story is fake, but there's a real story behind that fake story. there's a real story behind the people who told that story. What's the story of people who told you that story? And why did they tell you that story? Where did that story come from? There's a real story behind that fake story. And figuring out why people say these stories and how did these stories survive and some of them didn't tells the story about us. Tells the story about the human race. These stories are mirrors. They're both time machines and mirrors at the same time. Okay? So what else did I write?
It reminds me about how when I was little, we had this picture in our cabin of a skier on a mountain. And my grandpa asked me, Susanna, how many people are in this picture? I said, there's one person in this picture. I said, no, there's two. There's the skier and there's the photographer. Like through every photo, you're getting the perspective of the photographer. It's not just the people pictured.
Wait, who said that? I'm going to use that.
My grandpa.
Wow. Can I steal that from him?
I'm sure my grandpa wouldn't mind.
Right. So here, I wrote, again, I'm just reading the things that just came out of my mind right away. I also wrote, we can make so Jordan Peterson was crying about the objective world and narrative world touching through the story through Jesus, right? What I wrote is that we can make them touch the narrative world and the objective world by telling you that the fake stories include a real story about the people that told those stories and why they told those stories. So I already mentioned that. So great. So now that I'm thinking about it, I said the same thing that first came out of my mind.
Nothing if not consistent.
It seems like it. Here's another thing I thought, because I also thought that this is why is it important for people for these stories to be real, right? Because the whole argument was for a while that we can find significance in these stories, even if they're not real. But for a lot of people, that's not enough. These stories have to be real for them to be significant. But why do you think they want it to be real? Because I think for us, we want to be a significant part of the world. I think a lot of people feel that this is why the earth was the center of the universe. This is why God created the whole universe for the sake of us, right? We feel like nothing if we are just, a lot of people think like if we're just like chemical reactions that came in and didn't experience something and then just died out.
Every love you ever experience is just chemical firings in your brain.
Yeah. And they feel like there needs to be, this need for significance is so powerful to people, right? And it's so powerful in so much so that it doesn't seem like it's enough for people to be significant to other people. They want to be significant to the whole world, right?
Not the whole world, the whole universe, beyond our galaxy.
Right. Which is very interesting because the reason why we want to give agency to the universe is because a universe without agency is not a universe that can care. And, so wanting to be cared for wanting to have significance, so significance is another way of saying somebody cares about you, right? And it seems like other humans caring about you is not enough. So they want the universe to care about you, or the center of everything to care about you. And I guess this is also might make even more sense for people that don't get the attention or the care or the love from other fellow human beings, right?
Yeah.
So because what matters about anything if the creator of the whole universe is watching you and caring for you and loving you? Everything.
It's the only friend you need. It's the only relationship you need.
Everything else becomes insignificant, right? So But so the way this is actually what I went through as well when I was losing my
Mm-hmm.
faith. I couldn't stand losing God, right? So what I tried to do is to create my own personal God, right? I realized that God, there's no evidence for God. So I was like, you know what? God is my best friend. And I now figured it out that they made God in history. It was a man-made invention. And I figured it out mostly by studying history, not by atheist books or anything like that. That's when I figured it out when I was a teenager. I was like, this is a man-made concept. I was like, you know what? I'm not ready to lose God. I don't want to lose God. And God damn it, if they made God, I can make God. Like so many people through history made their own gods.
But the problem is
Hmm,
that placebo effect.
yes.
It doesn't
well,
work so well when
Yeah.
you know it's a placebo.
No, and also because I know it wasn't real,
Mhm.
right? So knowing that it wasn't real, knowing that this is a made-up friend, made me after a year or so, I'm like, I'm just talking to myself. Right? When I'm praying now, I know that I'm talking to myself. And it just made me feel ridiculous. And at some point I just, abandoned that God, right? But I kind of like that phase because it also made me look at the world in two different ways, right? I was like, there is two worlds. And this is my teenage years. I was going through this phase. I was like, there is one way to look at the world as look at myself as part of the world, right? So it's like outward in. There's an objective world that is completely independent from my views and my beliefs of it. It just exists. It existed for a long amount of time before me, and it will continue to exist a long time after me, and it has zero care for me. It's incapable of caring for me because it's not conscious. Okay? And in this world, I am nothing. Okay? And I'm like, okay, that's world A. And then there's the B world. And in that B world, this second world is my world. And the way I define this world is that it's my world of my experiences. Okay? And I realize that these two worlds are connected. The effect of me on the objective world is very limited. And the effect of the objective world on my personal world, the world of my experiences is a lot. Right? So as much as the A world doesn't care about the B world should care a lot about the A world, because the only way to change my experiences is to understand how objective reality works, right? So I need to understand how the A world works, right? But at the end of the day, the only thing I care about is the B world, right? Because what is caring? Caring is nothing other than an emotion, right? So the world that I experience is the only world I have. I do realize that the world of my experiences is very much dependent on how objective reality is, like my hormones, what I see, what I eat, what I drink, who I meet. But at the end of the day, the world of my experiences is the only world that I will live and die with, right? And in this world of experiences, something that maybe Jordan Peterson would call the narrative world, I am God, right? I am not as powerful of the God of the A world that they imagined, because again, I'm limited because this B world is constrained by objective reality, right? I cannot just like imagine myself to be flying. But at the end of the day, I could read stories. I'm in control of, I could figure out how to make myself happy and get happiness out of making other people happy. I could get significance out of, getting people who I care for me. And at the end of the day, I shouldn't go looking for meaning and significance in the A world. There is no source of significance in the A world. To want the universe to care for you is the same as wanting your shoe to care for you. It's incapable of caring for you. Like the universe is not going to care for you. It's like rocks in space, just like the sun is not going to care for you. The galaxies far, far away are not going to care for you. It's not conscious. It's not going to care for you. Okay. So I can only find meaning in the world of experiences. And in this world of experiences, or a narrative world, I am a lot more in control. And here's the thing. So in one sense, not only the source of the A world, the objective world, cannot give me significance. Not only I can find significance in the B world, which is the world where is the world of my experiences. It's actually the other way around. The only reason why anything in the objective world is significant is because significance comes from my world of experiences. So it's what I'm saying is that we're going into like wanting the universe to care for us to find significance, but the universe gets to be significant because of us.
Yeah,
like the universe owes us for significance.
You're welcome.
No, what I'm saying is the universe gets to be significant because we're observing it. So not only the universe is not giving us significance, we are giving significance because the universe got the chance to be observed by us. We are the giver of significance. Not only we shouldn't be like, hey, universe gives me significance. We should understand the universe is getting the significance because we are here to experience it. If we die, if our planet gets wiped out, all the stars and all the galaxies and everything else you see becomes immediately insignificant because there's nothing to give it significance, because there's nothing to observe it. Well, unless there's aliens somewhere, I don't know. So what I said here, I said, so I wrote here, when this is again not very well written because it was just the first thing that I just wrote down. I said they are important because they get to be observed by you. And then I also said closing the gap through, instead of trying to close the gap to Jesus, close the gap between the objective world and the narrative world through yourself. Through the storyteller or through the story reader. Right? And again, when I say story, everything is a story. Like in the world of experiences, in the B world, like stories. What story? Like, I don't read stories. Like
also literally how we form our own self-memory and sense of self.
Yeah,
it's
everything.
Story. That's why memory is so fallible.
Yeah,
because it's just a story we tell ourselves. Well, and you're retelling and changing it every time you recall and remember something.
Yeah, I mean, if you talk about politics, if you talk about what happened in an election, if you talk about what you did, if you just think about yourself yesterday, that was the story about you, right? Everything that you ever experienced, it's the story of something. Anyways,
well, I mean, like, I need to brush up on my cognitive psychology, but literally, like how this thing that we call ourself, all the memories that we have of ourself, like I can't really go into detail about it right now because it's been a few years since I studied it, but it's just a story. It's not just a perfect memory,
Okay, wait. So we have our member saying, music guy saying the alien robots who made this matrix are laughing at us. Mortal Skeptic is saying, yeah, there are tons of really weird experiments where people's minds will construct a false narrative when it needs to fill a gap without even realizing. Yeah. So here's the last thing I wrote on my notepad when I first saw Jordan Peterson's video. This is the biggest one here. Okay, so I said, the universe doesn't need to care about you. The universe gets to be cared by you. And that's not only why you're significant, that's the only thing that makes the universe significant. You're the giver of significance. You're the God of your mind, which is the only world that matters, because it's the only world you get to experience. Yeah. So that was it. So yeah, that was interesting. But a lot of Christians, by the way, are having a field day with that video of him crying about Jesus. They like having Jesus, having Jordan Peterson be moved by.
Oh, of course.
Jesus. Yeah. Yeah. So, oh, by the way, this goes very much in line with what Atheist Republic is trying to do when it comes to secularizing these narratives rather than reforming religion. Okay, I don't know how many people here are familiar with our philosophy here. Is the difference between secularizing religion and reforming religion. Reforming religion basically means keeping the worst part of religion, which is the belief that these are real stories.
Yeah.
Which is the source of a lot of our problems.
What
right?
could go wrong?
What could go wrong? So basically trying to adjust people's conclusions, but yet take the belief in the unbelievable, the belief without evidence, the belief. Again, as much as I emphasize how everything is about your experiences, denying the objective world is the worst thing you could do to the world of your experiences, because you are
never go full subjective. He's not a postmodern.
No. I do say that the world of experiences is the only thing you matter, and you have a lot more control over that. But that control is granted to you only when you understand, based on reason and evidence, and science and logic fallacies, about how the objective world, which is independent from your beliefs, affects your personal experiences. That's the only way that you become the God of your personal world. But go on.
Ultimately, it's anchored in objective reality that is observable to others around you.
Yes, exactly. So that's why we're against reforming religion, because it keeps religion alive for longer while maintaining the worst element of religion, which is faith. The most dangerous part of religion is faith. It's believing in things without evidence, right? But secularizing religion removes the most dangerous part of religion, which is belief the belief in the unseen, or what the Bible says. But we say the belief in the things without. When we say seen, means like no evidence, right? So we remove that part, that we go in, like remove it like a tumor, the faith part, and we keep the stories while realizing that these are just stories, right? Because there's a reason why these stories survive. Like, as much as you want to, deconstruct them and maybe like throw them away, these stories, these memes survive. Like, through the Darwinism of the memes, we don't want to get rid of these stories, because they are a mirror of humanity. These stories, the fact that they survived, the fact that they became the most popular stories out there, says something about us. And going through the process of discovery of what they say about us is a very worthy goal, right? And here's the thing: because we don't think that these stories are actually happened, we could get the benefit of the significance they have to people because of the cultural and the historical nature of it, and then we could add to them, play with them, color them the way we like them, and use some modernity and the modern ways of storytelling, and have a mix of both, right? We could sex them up, as we do here.
Literally.
We literally do that. And we could play around with them, so we get both the sense of we're playing with culture, we love playing with culture, we love playing with history, and yet we're going to introduce modern elements of storytelling into these narratives, and see where our hands are untied, because we get to do that, because we know that these are myths, right? This is secularizing religion, because it gets you to keep having fun with religion, with story, with mythology, with tradition, without actually believing that it happened, which is basically removing the worst part of it. So yeah, that was it. Anyways, that was about it. Anything else? Yes, exactly. Fit memes, the fittest memes, the survival of the fittest memes. Exactly. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Anything? Anybody tagged us before we go?
I'm still thinking about him talking about, like, if believers, so-called believers, really believed.
Mortad Skeptic is saying reform is let's give a less noisy toy to distract them so that it doesn't inconvenience us, even if it still disrupts them. Okay, yeah, kind of. Yes, I agree with that way of looking. Ishaq, Ibn Ishaq, is saying Jesus exists? ? Or is it another copy of a copy of a copy? The greatest story ever told. Okay, I don't know why is this.
No, he's trying to plug a video.
Okay, yeah. Well, I can't see what your video is. Yeah, I mean, it's not a copy of it has been an ever evolving story, just like all of them, right? They're not direct copies. Sometimes you see two stories in mythology or in different religions that are so similar, and I see a lot of atheists just say like, oh, they copied it from here. And
No,
usually
some stories are just so useful to cultures. They continue to come up independently. It's like you mentioned before, the evolution of the eye. So
there's
useful.
There's three possibilities. Sometimes they are direct copies of another story. Okay. Sometimes they had nothing to do with each other, and just like Susanna said, they are such popular narratives that they come about independently, just like an eye in evolution. So you could see there are 4 different versions of an eye in animals that are not copies of other eyes. They came about independently through evolution because they're such useful structures, right? There's a third option that they are not copies, but they are related because there are some tropes, there are some narratives that just exist in culture that just everybody just taps into when they're writing a story, like the hero narrative or this narrative. Or like, for example, the example some people give, some scholars give, is that imagine that, these days when you see like a love story, right? A lot of them in movies, in dramas, TV series are a lot like each other, right? The beginning of the plot, the middle of the plot, and the end of the plot. A lot of them are like in each other. That doesn't mean that they just copied the story from the previous person that said that. They're just playing into an expectation within the culture at the time, that this is the general expectation. This is the narrative that is just told. When you have a hero in a story, this is the narrative. When you have a love story at that time, at this culture, this is the narrative. When you have an evil person, this is the most popular narratives that you tap into. So you might be like not copying your story from another religion. This is just the archetypes and the most common tropes that exist within the culture, and everybody's just tapping into that, and that's why they seem so similar. So that's another explanation that happens sometimes. Anyways, we need to go. This is too much fun. That's why I'm not doing it. But I have to go. Anyways, talk to you guys later. Bye-bye. And subscribe to our newsletter. Oh, talking about secularizing religion. If you want sexy blasphemous art, which is sexing up religion, all of that for free. Link in the description. If you subscribe to our newsletter, you get all our blasphemous art for free. Link in the description. Subscribe. You can see how we do it. We don't just talk, okay? We are actually putting this in practice.
Money
Subscribe
where our mouth is.
and get all our blasphemous art for free. Yes.